Good morning, you beautiful people. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day today. Welcome to the first episode of Call of Duty Dynamics. In this series, I want to go through each of the Call of Duty dynamics and really explain what I would like to see from that certain dynamic or mechanic. Starting things off, we are going to talk about the one feature that I desperately want in Infinite Warfare, and that is decent footsteps. In order to talk about how we're going to implement a mechanic in Call of Duty, any mechanic in Call of Duty, we need to talk about the purpose of said mechanic. So what is the purpose of footsteps? The purpose of footsteps is not only to add a level of immersion to the game, but it's to add another level of awareness to the player. Our goal when implementing footsteps is going to be to give the player another layer of awareness. Of course, we want to do this in the most balanced way possible, so let's talk about the exact implementation of how I would do that. So here's the rule of thumb that I'm going to use when discussing footsteps. By default, if I am in the same room as an enemy, I should be able to hear their footsteps. If an enemy is approaching the room that I'm currently in, I do want to be able to hear them ever so slightly. This is something that Call of Duty Ghosts did wrong. Call of Duty Ghosts had incredibly loud footsteps. Yes, they were very, very useful, but they were borderline overpowered. I could easily tell when someone was going to enter the room that I was currently in. That is the area that I want it to be a skill. I want it to be just a tad bit quieter so that good players can use footsteps in order to hear it, whereas bad players might get distracted by other sounds. But if they are within the same room, definitely should be able to hear them. One thing the recent Call of Duties also get wrong is that while there are technically audible footsteps, you can't hear them over distant gunfire. If someone across the map or even to the room beside you fires their weapon, a grenade explodes, or a kill streak is going on, you can't hear footsteps very clearly in the new Call of Duties. I would argue that you can't hear them at all. That is a problem because Call of Duty is not a quiet game. Of course, unless you're playing Search and Destroy, but that's one game mode out of the plethora of other game modes available to us, and the majority of players actually play. Footsteps need to be audible over background noises. I should be able to hear the guy behind me even though my teammate from across the map is getting into a gunfight. Moving forward, in my opinion, there should not be an awareness perk. If footsteps are as audible as I have put forth, if they are as audible as we've had in the past, we do not need an awareness perk. What they should do is they should give everybody awareness by default. Just increase the footstep sounds by default. This simplifies the dynamic by having one perk affect footsteps, and that is dead silence. Dead silence is dead simple. Dead silence completely silences your footsteps, period, no matter what. But also what I would like it to do is if I am wearing dead silence, not only are my footsteps silenced towards my enemy, but towards me, the way I perceive it, my teammates' footsteps are silent to me. So many times in Infinite Warfare, I think a teammate is a bad guy because I hear their footsteps. I hear my teammates' footsteps 100 times more often than I hear enemy footsteps in Infinite Warfare. Another thing I want to add is if you don't want to run dead silence, then you should be able to crouch walk. That way, if you got caught with your pants down or you hear an enemy and you don't want him to hear you, then there's a little bit of counterplay even though you don't have the perk dead silence. Now that is the short and simple way of adding in footsteps in my opinion. So what does this result in? What does this dynamic look like in Call of Duty? In my opinion, this does get our goal accomplished. We do get a heightened state of awareness because now we have footsteps. However, I will assure you from experience when I've sound hoard people, this is a rusher's greatest weapon. It's one of the rusher's greatest weapons. Of course, minimap knowledge and spawn knowledge and all that stuff. But this, when you are up close towards the enemy spawn, not necessarily in the enemy spawns, but near the enemy spawns, being able to hear enemies spawn around you, work around you, and maneuver in such a tactical way, it is so rewarding and it will increase your lifespan. If we didn't have footsteps in Call of Duty and we wanted to rush into the enemy spawns, we may or may not be able to tell where the enemies were coming from. Of course, we do have that map knowledge and spawn knowledge. However, the exact location, the pinpoint accuracy and awareness that footsteps allows us may not be there, and it may result in our death. So the pros to having footsteps is an increased of awareness. There's more strategy and tactics in that close quarter combat situations that everybody loves about Call of Duty, and this actually helps rushers be successful and maintain their kill streaks while in enemy territory. That sounds great to me. But what are the cons to footsteps? What don't people like about footsteps? Number one, people say that it's pay to win because you need an expensive headset in order to hear footsteps. This cannot be farther from the truth. Any old headset will do. My first time sound whoring people was on a $10 pair of earbuds that I got from Walmart. You don't need to go out and buy the Astro headsets that everyone's trying to sell you because they claim to be able to give you this ability to sound whore people. No matter which headset you use, it's a skill that you need to develop. You're not going to get it right away. Sound whoring is not pay to win. The next downside that I hear is that footsteps only help campers. Campers sit in their corner and they hear footsteps and they just camp because they're evil spawns from hell. So which situations would a camper be able to sound whore you? Well, if the guy's camping, that probably means he's within his own spawn. And if he can sound whore you, that means you're not running dead silence. But that means you're also in the enemy spawn, so what are you doing in the enemy spawn without running dead silence? That's the counterplay. That is the dynamic here with footsteps. If you are going to rush in the enemy spawn, if you're going to shotgun, if you're going to SMG, you're going to get up in other people's face, you gotta run dead silence. But if you want to use an assault rifle, LMG, snipe, kind of hold back, hold key positions of advantage, playing domination or demolition or hardpoint, then you may not need dead silence if you're not going to move around all too much. But if you do decide to do, of course, like I said before, you can just crouch walk. It's not necessarily the most viable option, but if you think an enemy is nearby, it's a very, very good option to always have available to you. The last downside, and the downside that I can most relate to, is this could mean that dead silence is a necessary perk for a lot of people, because the way people play Call of Duty, they love to rush, they love to run around, flip spawns, and run around like chickens with their heads cut off. And if they want to do that successfully, then they're going to need to run dead silence. But, in my opinion, that's just sort of kind of the trade-off. If we have UAVs, we need ghosts. If we have footsteps, we need dead silence. And I wholeheartedly believe that we need the minimap and we need footsteps in order to increase the skill gap in Call of Duty and to make it a fun, tactical shooter. And as my friend Tabor Hill says, and that, as they say, is that. Footsteps in Call of Duty and how I would implement them. Please tell me your guys' thoughts. I need your feedback, both on the formatting of the episode as well as the series itself. Do you like this episode? Do you like this series? Do you like this format? Let me know in the comment section below. Thank you guys once again for watching. If you made it this far, be sure to give it a like, and until the next absolutely beautiful Call of Duty morning, I'll catch up with you guys later. And as always, stay beautiful.